Hi there, Elevated Planet community. This is John Drew here from Elevated Planet, and today I'm with Aoibhinn Murray. Hi there, Aoibhinn. How are you doing?
I'm great. How are you?
Fantastic, thank you. Fantastic. And I've been really looking forward to our conversation here because to fully divulge to the community, I've had a healing session with Aoibhinn a few weeks ago, and I've got to say it was amazing. Not me, not just me, but my partner as well. And she had similar feedback on it. It was like quite something. So I was interested to explore this further because I know the story behind this is not exactly mainstream conventional.
Absolutely, yeah. It's anything but. Even in the spiritual world, it's not normal, So it's pretty out there. So you need to put your woo-woo hat on.
Yes, yes. But you see, this is the thing. The more I get into this, the more I realize that the abnormal is actually really that is part of reality. It's just that we hadn't appreciated it till now. Now is the time when all these new versions and expanded versions of reality are coming on stream. So here's an opportunity for us to kind of grasp it and to try and get our heads around it and see where it takes us. So first thing in there, could you just like give us a little bit of background on what it is you do? Because I know it's not just one thing; it's a bunch of things. But if you give us that and a little bit of history about how you've got to where you are.
Well, I am a combination, a bit of a mixed bag. So I am a healer first and foremost. All of my work is about assisting people to get into their essential self or to embody more of their essential self. And part of that is mediumship and tarot. I'm also a massage therapist, I'm a shamanic practitioner, and a teacher. So I teach in this area as well. And I'm very keen on teaching people about their energetic field and their sovereignty. They're standing in their own power and taking responsibility for who and what they are. We have, as a species, we have been conditioned to hand our power away from the time we're born.
Yes.
So we're born, we go straight into, we have the first few years, we then go into the educational system, and you may have gone into a belief system, like a spiritual belief system or a religion. So the conditioning starts as soon as you enter this plane of existence. And then you may start having experiences, you may start having spiritual experiences or esoteric or metaphysical experiences, as I did at a young age, and you don't really know where to go with that. So hence the reason I went on the spiritual path, to try and understand myself more, to try and understand what I was experiencing. And either you could say fortunately or unfortunately, when I started my trainings, if you like, about 29 years ago, nearly 30 years ago, there was a lot of teachers teaching the purely light side of spiritual work and healing
Right.
work, and not addressing the shadow aspects. And I feel, as a practitioner and as a teacher, that it's important to explain both sides to people so they understand what's coming up in themselves, their own shadow aspects that are coming up, to be healed,
Mm-hmm.
and also when they're working with other people to be able to hold a space for people that they may be working with, if they have clients, and take, I'm all about taking the woo woo out of this,
Yeah.
bringing the information in and out into the world in a very real way and tangible way.
Mm-hmm. It's interesting you say that about the shadow side as well, because Chris Styles, who of 365 pin code, Chris is a genius at what he does. And whenever he pulls together your charts, he always talks about your main numbers, but also your shadow numbers. So every aspect has that duality to it, if you like. So to be aware of, okay, this is the public facing bit, this is the bit that's in the background that offsets that, and it's kind of like an awareness of both helps you to balance things out. So I know Chris is a big advocate of that as well.
Yeah, yeah. Well, it's really important because that's how you deepen your experience of your life,
Mm,
and you deepen your path while you're here. Is so important to try and get to know yourself on so many different levels, and not just get the hit of the what I call the fluffy bunnies, you know, where it's all there can be a bit of spiritual bypassing in the community, where when I was kicking around and doing a lot of my trainings in the past, you were encouraged not to look at that side because you would attract it to you. The only place I came across where that didn't happen was with the shaman who trained me when I did my shamanic training, and he taught and encouraged us to experience those aspects of ourselves as well, and to integrate them, because these parts of us can be very wounded, and they need to be loved, and they need to be integrated and accepted as part of the whole. And then you can function in society in a much greater way, and then you can be of service to other people and to spirit, because I'm in service to spirit in a much more profound way and much more meaningful way.
Yeah, it's and again, it's interesting because when I did my interview with Sheila Seppi, who's the walk-in, one of the things she helped to open her up was her work on the shamanic side as well, and she had her shamanic guide, if you like, or the one who taught her how to do all this, and she was a descendant of the Hopi Native American Indians, which I found quite interesting because I believe your shamanic teacher also had Native American type of roots as well. Is that true?
There were two. There was Mother Feather, who is a Cherokee elder in America. So I was invited over to her, years ago, nearly 19, 20 years ago. And I spent some time with her, and she taught me about a lot of the history of the Native American, the Cherokee, and I walked part of the Trail of Tears as well, which is where the president of the time, Andrew Jackson, had removed a lot of the Native Americans from their land, and they had to walk this, what's called the Trail of Tears. There was a place called Mantle Rock, and I walked under Mantle Rock, and this is where the soldiers and the indigenous people would shelter for the night, and they had so many illnesses and diseases, and I don't know if people have cleared it or not, but I know that it's the spirit of a Native American woman came up to me with a baby and was trying to give me her baby to look after. So there was still a lot of trauma there. That is separate to my shamanic training. That was with an Irish shaman. He runs a facility called Shamanism Ireland.
Okay.
So there were the two of them, and then I had a spiritual director as part of that at one point, who lived up the Dublin Mountains as well, so I'd go up and see him. So there have been various different teachers along the way, and then there have been teachers who have taught me other healing modalities as well. But the indigenous, the Native American connection was so strong for me. When I went over, we stayed in this really backwater town in Maryland, and the back of the house actually backed onto a forest. And you'd see these deer and all different animals coming down. And so I spent a lot of time in nature and a lot of time sitting on the porch with Mom Feather, and she would tell me all about the history. And they built a sacred fire, and they gave myself and my partner at the time a Native American name. And I didn't want to leave. When I came home to Ireland, I spent about a week crying because I felt like I had just been ripped away from my home. I felt so connected to this land and to these people. So connected. Yeah.
It just shows, doesn't it? Because again, it come back to past lives, right? And connections that they're at a soul level. And again, I know it's a bit of a stretch for the mainstream folks necessarily, but having lived multiple lives, we've a lot of us who've been on the planet before, I mean, fine, if you're a starseed and this is your first incarnation, but for many people who've been here through thousands of incarnations and you've experienced so many things, it's just you don't realize it, because when you're born into this world, the deal is that you forget everything. But you can make those connections, and sometimes they reach out to you as well, because the reason you go to a specific place, it's not a coincidence. It's a synchronicity, because it's teaching you what you already knew, but you just didn't know you knew it until you'd been there. It's just like the weirdest thing. But I can kind of and I've studied quite a bit on the Native American side of things, and one of the things I do recognize is the deep wisdom of the people. Obviously, a lot of what happened there was really horrible in terms of the European settlers and what they did, because they didn't understand any better. They thought they were civilizing them. And the reality is that it should have been the other way around, I think, in many ways. Living in harmony with nature, living in balance with the world around them was part of who they were. And, you know, there's so much we can learn today from the way they were when they were allowed to be who they effectively evolved to be, I suppose. But anyway, so yeah, this shamanic journeying side of things. So that's something that I've always been fascinated by that. I want to do some journeying. I've never been able to do any journeying yet. I've not got my mind around it yet. Your experience of that, can you give us a little clue on how that's been for you?
Well, when you learn to journey, it's like meditation. It's a practice. It's something that you can't just do once or twice or three times and think you're going to have mastered it. It doesn't work like that. So, in shamanic terms, you would go into an altered state of consciousness, either through drumming or trance dancing, or somebody might imbibe a substance to do that. My experience has been through drumming, and that brings you into an altered state whereby you can then start exploring what's called non-ordinary realities. Go in and get information, because traditionally the shaman was the person that people came to find out information and to solve issues, and the shaman would journey on behalf of the villager who had come to them, or the tribe member who had come to them, and bring the information back and assist with the healing of that individual through that. So I think one of the blocks for people can be where they dismiss what their imagination is doing for them when they're having a journey. They'll begin to think, is this just my imagination? Or, yeah, I must be making all of this up. And yes, that's fantastic. Your imagination is a tool that you have, that you're blessed with. In our society, we have undervalued the imagination. We have rated it at zero in a lot of ways in order to disempower people, in order for them not to be able to understand their own tools and their own power.
Yes.
So the imagination is used. So what I've learned over the years is I don't dismiss anything that I see when I'm in any kind of trance work. And I will take a note of that. It takes time, and it takes commitment, and it takes practice, and that's how you master it.
Yes.
And in that said, though, I was at a cacao ceremony on Sunday, and as soon as I took the cacao, I had an instant reaction to it. I really connected with the energy, mother energy, and I wasn't expecting it. I thought, you know, it's going to be a nice thing to do, and it'll be, you know, I've just come back from Morocco, as you know, and I had some spiritual work to do over there. It'll be, I feel called to go to the ceremony, but I didn't know why. And then Sunday night, I began having out-of-body experiences about 2.5 years ago. And I've had about 2 or 3, and on Sunday night I had 3 of them in succession.
Wow.
Sunday night, and I got no sleep. So, you know, these ceremonies and these practices that we carry out, they don't always take effect at the time. You can have the impact of them can have an effect later on. For me, it was pretty immediate, and then that night I had, you know, a couple of or 3 OBEs. But for other people, it may take a period of weeks. And also there has to be time for integration. When you're doing this type of ritualistic work or practice, the 3D self isn't accustomed to it. So there has to be time for the 3D self to be able to assimilate what's going on and kind of make sense of it to a certain degree.
Yes.
But it does take practice. Now, I know of a certain person who keeps saying, I have no superpowers. I have no superpowers. I have no. You know who this person might be, don't you, John? And yet this person has very heightened abilities and is maybe not fully aware that. So there's the work that has taken place and the work that the individual has done, and it actually is working. But you may not see it at the time, or you may not acknowledge it until later.
Yeah.
That's why the consistency, the persistence of it.
Yes. Yes, no, and it's a good point. I tend to dip in and out of things too much. I'm curious about everything, but I also, one of the things I always think is that if I was going to say superpowers are non-specific, because I think it's more my job to kind of reach out to people who have very specific abilities, like you, like Faye, like Sheila, and what you bring is something very special. And I love the idea of us drawing this together to actually get out and teach people. Because I mean, to me, this is one of the most amazing things. And again, I've talked about this before, is that we have a team, you know, because as you say, we get programmed and conditioned when we're born into this world to believe this version of 3D reality, which tries to draw somewhere between 2D and 3D because it's limiting us. Yeah. Whereas in reality, we actually have an enormous amount of ability and power that we just do not appreciate because we're told we don't. And the fact is that we have this team, right? We have a team of guides, angels, whatever, who are there to support us through life. But you have to ask. Yeah. You have to reach out. But for most people, they would dismiss the thought that they even have a team, you know, because it's not logical in the way that we're brought up and programmed and conditioned in life. And 5 years ago, I would have thought it was complete nonsense. Now I know it's true.